I've heard a lot of criticisms with the newest chapter of Berserk, chapter 368, and how it ended with Griffith taking Casca, presumably, towards Falconia, holding her in his arms as Guts tragically watches from the distance as he sinks deeper into the ground that is breaking away underneath his feet. Now, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that once Berserk was officially greenlit to continue after the passing of Miura, that undoubtedly a large portion of the fanbase would begin to view it with a lot more harsh of a lens than they had before, because now they can always say, that's not how Miura would do it, or this doesn't look how Miura would draw it. But here's the thing. Koji Mori has been Miura's best friend and colleague for the entire run of Berserk. There is currently no human being on planet Earth who is more qualified to write this continuation, and Mori has specifically stated plenty of times that he chose to finish the story based on the fact that he knows Miura would have wanted him to, and the not-so-small fact that Miura told him all of the major beats that were going to happen to lead towards the ending. So, if you are upset over what is happening with the destruction of Elfhelm and Casca's fate, it's the same thing that would have happened with Miura at the helm. The only difference, perhaps, is the way the story is told through paneling and the artwork, and this is the thing with the art, which I think at this point criticizing is kind of a futile endeavor, because nobody will ever be able to recreate Miura's style perfectly, ever. Because nobody will ever be Kentaro Miura. Every single artist in the world has a very specific and unique style, and it's more than just drawing lines on a piece of paper. Maybe this will sound a little too woo-woo nonsense for some people, but an artist puts their soul into their drawings, the same way that a writer puts it into their books or a photographer puts it into their pictures. We resonated with Miura's art because more than just looking at lines that looked good, we felt this unique and specific energy that lied within it. The artists at Studio Gaga are trying their best to replicate that art. One, so that it remains consistent chapter to chapter and doesn't feel like an entirely new artist, but also we must remember that no matter how well they can imitate Kentaro Miura's art, it will still be an imitation. So we either appreciate the amount of incredible effort that they are putting into it in order to give us the art that is reminiscent of what we came to know and love, or if you simply do not like it, that's fine, but there's no need to attack the artist for not being able to do something that literally no person on Earth is able to do. For me right now, it's way more about the story than it is about the artwork, and personally, I think they're doing a great job anyway. I also find it amusing how many people have been complaining about the lack of dialogue in these very few action-heavy chapters, as if Miura himself didn't have action-based chapters with minimal dialogue scattered all the way through the entire run of Berserk. And do you remember how many people kept complaining with every single new Elfhelm chapter that things were too peaceful, that it was too boring, that there was no action, that it's just Guts hanging out with a bunch of witches? Do y'all remember this? Because I sure the hell do. All those years of people saying that it was too slow, and now we have a huge action-based chapter of Guts versus Griffith for the first time in the story in decades. Oh, well, now there's too much action and not enough dialogue. Like, you honestly can't win with some of these people. Like, they will just complain for the sake of complaining, which kind of leads me into my next point. Casca. The amount of bad takes that I have heard about this Casca stuff this week, man. Let's see, I've heard Casca will go back to losing her mind, that she will be assaulted by Griffith again, that she's just a plot device, that she will fall in love with Griffith again. There's so many things. And look, I can understand as a fan being upset that Casca was essentially unconscious for this entire segment of Griffith and Guts face-to-face, but I guarantee you that this is not going to go in the simplistic ways that people are thinking. Berserk has always been able to set us up with something that we think that we understand and then completely pull the rug out from under us. This situation does and will make sense with time. First of all, Miura did not take us through this entire journey of getting Casca to Elfhelm and making it through the entire dreamscape sequence just to revert Casca back to losing her mind right after. If you remember, when Casca woke up regaining her consciousness and awareness for the first time, she was still missing a few final fragments up until the memories of the eclipse, but after a few moments of triggers, they have slowly returned to her. Guts unable to look at Guts and having flashes of the eclipse is not all that unsimilar to her seeing Griffith right before her eyes and collapsing once more. She needs to see and face these things, these traumatic events, in order to internalize and move past them. Of course she passed out seeing Griffith. What else would have happened? If she wasn't able to look at Guts, who, let's face it, has attributed some major trauma to her as well, but not a fraction of that Griffith has. She also had the horror of realizing that the Moonlight Child was her child and watching that child transform into her rapist right before her eyes. That's not exactly something that's easy to deal with, I would imagine. So Casca passing out while seeing Griffith makes total sense to me. Also, Casca being taken to Falconia serves multiple purposes that make total sense within the story. If she passed out, it makes it easier to take there, number one, but also, Griffith, who is fused with the Moonlight Boy, continues to return to Casca each time the boy takes over control of the body. So, instead of flying halfway across the world every single time that happens, why not just take Casca back with him so that the next time he transforms, she's right there. He doesn't have to go anywhere. Also, I would wager that Griffith is physically incapable of harming Casca due to the boy's influence. We first saw this way back when he instinctively saved her from the falling rock debris at the Hill of Swords, so if he can't kill her, then it only makes sense to keep his weakness close by so that nobody can exploit it. I also believe that once Casca gets to Falconia, another part of her entire story is going to be told. I do not believe for a second that she's going to be locked up in some dungeon somewhere. She will probably be free to roam, probably given a luxurious room, and she's going to interact with a lot of the other characters that are there. Highly likely that she will interact with Charlotte and maybe even Sonia to have a few conversations. She's going to see what has become of Midland, which is now Falconia, and she is going to understand that her child and Griffith are one and the same. Maybe there will even be conversations about her and Griffith mutually wanting to separate the boy from his body if that can be done. Casca is going to be trapped in Falconia, but she is not going to be a damsel in distress. She will have plenty to do and probably a ton of character development along the way, which makes more sense for her to have while she's on her own, left to her own devices, and figuring things out for herself. It also works great for the narrative of Guts. Guts made his vow to never lose Casca again, so what will he do now seeing her depart the way that she did? I have a feeling that this is going to lead into his truest test. I have a feeling that in order to escape the pit where he is falling into, it will heavily require the Berserker Armor's activation. So seeing if Guts will be able to persevere now, or if he will let that darkness and despair overtake him. I think that Casca being gone will be his true and final test of that Berserker Rage, of mastering it, or becoming just like the Skull Knight. There are 2 more chapters in the Elfhelm segments of Fantasia, and I think that these 2 chapters will focus on the island's destruction and our characters being disbanded. It might go back to Guts and Puck being alone together, similar how the series began, which would be an interesting callback moving into the final arc. Also, maybe Farnese and Shurike make it back to Roderick's ship in time. Then you have the group of Serpico, Isidro, Isma, and Danan. Maybe they'll escape another way. And truthfully, I really like the idea of the group being separated, less able to rely on each other's abilities, and maybe each of them will make their own specific trips towards Falconia. One of them maybe even meeting up with Rickert and Salat along the way. And finally, all of them will reconvene at the gateway of Falconia heading towards the final battle. Just as Casca, infiltrating from the inside, heads towards her own character's conclusion, and when the eventual meeting of Guts and Casca does happen again, maybe during the blazes of Falconia, among the war-torn battle below, while the God Hand looms on the horizon, they will have faced their own demons, both on their own as an internal level, and now with one another. Or at least, that's my humble opinion of what could happen. Personally, I think Miura had a lot more creative things planned to happen after this moment. And I think that Koji Mori is going to deliver them to us. We just have to be patient. This continuation is meant to bring finality to this story. And it's okay to not like it. It's okay to give up reading it, but I think that it's wrong to simplify it based on one event where we don't know yet where it will lead. Anyways, you guys tell me what you think down below. Let me know if you think that it's going to get a lot more complex, or if you truly think that Casca is just here to be a damsel in distress. Let me know all that down in the comments below. Where do you think it's going to go from here? And we'll just have to wait for the next few chapters and go about it from there. Other than that, though, guys, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time.